Hey everyone, welcome to one of the final videos on the principles of reading and writing. And in this one, what we're going to focus on is what is called the length principle. And so by the end of this, you should be able to define what the properties of the length principle are and how to apply it to improve your own academic literacy. Again, here, reading and writing. So what is and the reason why is because the length principle isn't the most important, to be honest. But it's something to keep in mind because it really helps move our brain through ways of thinking through complicated ideas. And let's jump into what it is. So the length principle is basically this. The more complex an idea is, the more length you're probably going to need to explain it. And that's true of a word, a sentence, a paragraph, an entire essay. The more complicated something is, the more effort it probably takes to explain it. And you can see this in words, so let's do it. So if we take the word act, that just means something like to do. It might also mean, like an act of a play. But here, I'm just doing a verb right now. So an act is to do something. If I add the suffix ive to the end, it becomes active. And the definition of that is characterized by action rather than contemplation. You're doing something, not thinking about it. I'm active, not just sitting around. But again, we're shifting here to a noun, and it's because, or not a noun, an adjective, and it's making this more complicated. It's not just to do it, but it's being characterized by the action. It's being characterized by someone who does stuff. If we add another suffix to it, ness, activeness, that becomes the state of being characterized by action rather than the state of contemplation. It adds more complexity to it. As we're making this word longer, our understanding of what it is becomes more complicated. And if we add this prefix interactiveness completely changes the meaning and makes it even more complicated. The state of being characterized by action done with others rather than by contemplation or actions done alone. Wow. So you can see here, the longer this word gets, the more complicated it gets. And I bet you have seen that in almost all of the words you've encountered in your entire life. Simple words are short, complicated words are long. You can also see it in writing. If we look at this academic article on Stephen Chbosky's The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Michael Caden, called The Irony of Narration, you can see here that these sentences, the more complicated they are, the longer they are. So if we look at this sentence, Stephen Chbosky's The Perks of Being a Wallflower, a 1999 MTV publication, is the story of a new high school student, Charlie, told through his letters to a person never identified to their quarter. 34 words. A shorter sentence. The letters cover Charlie's first years in high school. Not a complicated idea. We don't need a lot of words for it. 18. Charlie is a character narrator and invites comparisons to Catherine. That's another book that they talked about earlier. Short, easy to understand. 10. Go into the next sentence. Unlike Cushman, however, Chbosky uses first person to address in highly dialogic ways through a number of methods. More complicated, let's go to 16. Next sentence, we're getting even more complicated. We go to 35. And so you can see here how we move through this. You can also see the length principle at work too. We don't keep the sentences the same length. We try to move through them. This one's almost kind of like a sandwich. But again, we try to vary these sentences up to reflect the complexity of an idea, but also to make readers more engaged. That said, 35 words, and you see it here, this is just a short one, we don't really go more than 35 words. 35 words is usually when English speakers kind of max out. This isn't true for other languages. Some languages we can have really long sentences. English just doesn't do that. English is a language that likes short, quick, easy to understand sentences. So my general rule of thumb, and it's not a hard rule, it's just something I try to remember, is that 35 words is usually when we max out. You can have a couple sentences that are longer. There's no problem with that. It's especially true if you're going to use quotations and stuff. But 35 words is really where you want to start limiting yourself and maybe just break something into 2 sentences. Because ultimately, the length principle is about helping writers to determine how much they need to talk about something. And of course, use this in combination with all the other principles, but it's really just like, how much can a reader process? How much do I need to spend on this? So as we think about this in review, we just want to understand what the length principle is. It's that complex ideas need more length, basically. The longer something is, or the more complicated something is, the longer it needs to be. So you might also think about how the length principle here relates to the emphasis principle, the given new principle, the proximity principle. How does this one, which doesn't necessarily feel immediately connected, how is this intimately related to all of the other ones? Because it absolutely is. And then how might the length principle make reading harder? How might it make it easier as you're reading? how might this affect how you read? How might you try to pay attention to the length of sentences now, or the length of paragraphs, or the length of sections, or the length of articles? And then my final question is, what confuses you the most about the length principle still? And again, as always, if you have questions about those, if there are things you want to understand better, please email me at kbolt@elgin.edu, and I would be more than happy to give you some clarity on them. In the meantime, have a good one, and I will see you in our next video. And also, for what it's worth, I personally think the length principle is the easiest one to understand, and you'll probably notice this was the shortest video by a lot. Ain't that related?